I am calling this meeting of the Water and Utilities Committee to begin. Keith, would you like to give a brief explanation of the issue at hand?
Yeah. I turned in a request originally in February. It has changed since then, and I'll get to that.
Same issue, though.
Same issues. We had a meeting with Avon Lake. It's usually every year. Nino and I and Andy attend it. I call it the rate increase meeting. They call it the customer meeting. They're required under our contract to give us 6 months' notice of a rate increase, so this is the meeting where they do that. Subsequent to the February meeting, they changed the rate a little bit, so again, I'll get to that, but I put in a request that had 4 parts after that meeting in February. Part 1 is that we increase our rate commensurate to the amounts that Avon's rate to us increases, which has been our past practice for probably 10-plus years. We've been doing that. Part 2 is that I'd like to look at the reconnect charge, and I feel we haven't raised it in a very long time, and I think we're losing money every time we shut somebody off and turn them back on when you look at what expenses the city has involved in that process versus what we're getting. So I would like to make that a function of, you can see in my request, I made it the hourly rate for a meter technician rounded to the nearest $25 because I don't want to be charging people something in 2 cents. Just so that it keeps up with the time, so that as those wages go up, we keep up with what it costs us to do this. Part 3 is the deposit, and again, it is set out in dollars, but as the water bills go up over time, the deposit covers less and less of the amount that we have out there. So similarly to the prior request, I would like to make that a function of the minimum bill. And I realized when I was reading through this, I didn't say round it off, but yeah, I'd like to round that off to $25 or $10, wherever you decide, but I'd like to make it a function of the bill so that as water rates rise in the future, the deposits will keep up with those increases and be enough to cover most of what people owe us. And then finally, Andy, who's the water superintendent, was along, and I was talking about this request we're getting ready together, and he said, hey, while you're at it, can you ask them to raise the deposit for a water key for water haulers? The reason he had that request is one of their water haulers lost his key and we had to replace it, and it cost us more to replace it than what we charged him for it. So he said, we really need to keep up with that so that we're not losing money on these water keys. Yeah. The only thing that changed was when Avon Lake got back together in June, they went from, at the February meeting, they gave us 3 years of rate increases. At the June meeting, they'd cut it back to only 2. And our first year is very low. It's 0.49% because they're increasing their rate, but they're decreasing the rate to the smaller portion that we pay to the consortium that's on our particular line because they have plenty of money in there. So it offsets. We end up with a 0.49% increase and then a 4.49 in the second year. I recommended, I mean, we could follow those if we want to, but it seems like it's a waste of time to do a 0.5% increase in our water rates. So I recommended that instead we smooth that out and do basically 2.5 and 2.5 just to get to the same place over the 2 years. That's it.
Okay. Does anyone on council have any questions? Start with the committee.
No.
No.
Any other council members in the audience have any questions?
I think
Administration?
Nino and Keith keep us pretty well
Yeah, I'm pretty up to
advised.
speed. It sounds to me like this is something that the Utility Rate Commission should further discuss. I would entertain a motion that the Utility Rate Commission just meets and discusses it first before we vote and make a decision whether to pass this to finance.
I'll make the motion that we request the Utility Rate Review Commission to meet and go over these numbers and make a presentation to this board.
And I second that.
All right.
All in
It
favor?
passes. Yes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All
Jess,
right.
hey,
Calling.
Jess, just one thing.
Yes.
So although what Keith says makes sense about taking the average of the 2 years and spreading it over the 2 years, I think the ordinance that you all passed says that whatever the increase is what it'll go up each year. So we either need to change the ordinance.
They didn't adopt that. I had recommended
I
it.
thought
and they didn't.
we do it automatically, whatever the rate is.
No,
They
I
review it each time?
Yeah, they
Why
review-
don't you
Okay.
just
Okay,
take
as long as
like,
we review it, then we're fine.
you know, 2.4 and then 2.6 if you want to spread it out. That way it increases, but not by a lot. But regardless, meeting is closed.
Okay.
We are done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who attended.